Good afternoon and welcome to this special edition. We're throwing something together today because of what many of us have seen in the news. And with me tonight, I have some people to help deliver some facts around what's happening with 23andMe and the data involved. And then, of course, to kind of put into perspective our role in data privacy, and really what's in it for our community. So I have Dr. Laura Barden with me, who is our Dean of Students at DNA University. I have Dr. Bryce Wild, who is our Chief of Innovation and Pharmacology. I have Rick Cox, who is our Chief Financial Officer. Thank you all for being here. Welcome. How are you guys doing?
Wonderful.
Doing well.
Excellent.
Rick, you're still muted. There you go. Yeah, so it's been a wild ride. So I was in Miami over the weekend at the Biohacking World event, and at midnight or 12:30 or something, I get a text message that says 23andMe on the brink of bankruptcy. And you know, it's 12:30 at night. I wrote back, no shit, right? I mean, who didn't know that that was coming? And, you know, so Sundays I'm getting ready and I'm coming home and I'm starting to read all of this stuff. And I'm looking at a company that's 18 years old that raised, you know, $6 billion at its valuation in 2021. And by the way, it's never gotten back to that level from that day. And Anne's entire board resigned. And, you know, as CEO of the company, I couldn't help but think to myself, you know, thank God this shit ain't happening to me. Right? I mean, you have to look at this and go, this is a big deal. So I want to get into how we got here, and really specifically what our responsibility is to our community, to our patients, to our practitioners, to our providers. When we have 30,000 providers all over the world that use our testing. So it really is important that we dig into some of this. So Rick, how did we get here? How did 23andMe get to this? What are we all doing here?
Well, you know, I think that 23andMe has a great model. I think that the vision for the company was to create this super dynamic powerhouse DNA company that could cure diseases by altering the DNA within each of our bodies. And I just think that's the issue, is that trying to create a cure by altering DNA while somebody is sick it's not necessarily impossible, but it's a challenge. And obviously with the amount of cash that they spent on all of the research they've done, I'm sure they had some hope for good research that came out.
We're losing you a bit, Rick. Try to restart your internet connection if you can. So, Dr. Wild, let's talk about what Rick just said. I mean, they started out with great intentions. They wanted to start doing some work with, I know it was GlaxoSmithKline and a few others. I know Richard Branson got his hat in the ring at some point. And I think that the intent was good, right? The intent was, hey, we've got all of this great data point, and we can help create something. But again, it's a reactive creation as opposed to reverse and preventative care, kind of like how we focus. So how do you think that they made a mistake there?
Well, as a quick backstory, at least from my world, having started in clinical practice over 20 years ago, I can tell you we're still decades away from CRISPR, you know, where we can go in there and cut apart your DNA and reinsert. That's not to say experimentation's not alive and well, but how that will ever become legal within the world of medical science and application, we're still a long way away. But framing this up for folks joining us tonight, and welcome, what an incredible topic and time to be alive. Cytogenetics or even the study of disease genetics is amazing. It identifies and it can map genetic mutations or chromosomal changes linked to disease. This is sort of the world outside of Ancestry, which, by the way, 23andMe it's fun. Look, I learned I'm 0.9% Western African. That's wonderful. I even met some, you know, Scottish ancestors, 4th, 5th cousins that I didn't even know I had. It's wonderful, right? But While functional genomics, which is what we do at the DNA company, explores these genes that have biological functions, pathways, which are incredibly meaningful to health outcomes. So this often integrates environmental, lifestyle factors, diet, nutrition. We weave all this together meaningfully, and of course, the incredible amount of pathways that we look at and consider. So these fields separately and together, they provide this really interesting approach to understanding what we are made of, which is this DNA, and being able to potentially treat genetic disorders. That's cytogenetics, that's disease genetics. We're not going to tell you we're 1.24 times more likely to develop cystic fibrosis. We will tell you how your detox pathways work, how your hormone pathways work, how your cardiovascular system, your digestive function, and even your brain, mood, executive function is working. So having said all that as a frame up and sort of come full circle to answer your question, where do I think this is all at, and how do I think this is going? Look, I feel bad for Anne. The reality is, I think because of the wait time that it would ever take for science and medicine to get to the point of cytogenetic, CRISPR editing is so out there. So what else do they do with this data? And they try to get into, health analytics the way we've long been in it. And they couldn't do it. There's no real good meaningfulness. Besides what I'm sure Dr. Varden and I will get into it a little deeper, is that we actually look and screen. You don't know what you don't test for. They don't test for things that we do test for. So their insights pale in comparison to what we're doing.
Yeah, I think that that's true. I think that, when you're looking at, I went through all the stuff on, Bloomberg and WSJ and all of these people, and they're all saying the same thing. They got themselves in to this space where they're doing all of this research, and the research they were doing was expensive. But, you look at the DNA company. When Kashif brought me in to build the operation and then essentially become the executive officer, for 8 years, we hadn't turned a profit, right? And the fact is we are in this to make a difference and to make money, but you can do those two things, right? And the goal of making a difference does not have to come at the cost of the value of the entity. We got profitable within 4 months, and amen, we have stayed there from then to now. And I think that when you look at how they spent money, Rick, you and I have talked about this a little bit. And in fact, Rick, you're still muted, so unmute yourself. You look at how they spent the money. Rick, they were what, 312 million down last year?
Yep, that's about right.
Wow.
So it's a lot of Actually, last year they spent in total about $600+ million on operations and cost of goods sold to create $200 billion of revenue. So,
wow. So, they at one point, Rick, they were $999 for the test in the very beginning. Remember that back in, I think it was what, 2010, or just before that, 2008. And now they're at $99. Right? It's dropped off just a bit.
Yeah,
it has.
Moore's law.
Right?
Moore's law is the law in which, genetic analysis actually trailed and, trended. So yeah, there was a point back in 2001 where I spent over $10,000 to have my data set run. And we're not talking about the 20,000 some odd genes that, we can now see, look at. We're
Right.
talking about a few hundred. So what 23andMe, and by the way, that actually speaks to inaccuracy in testing as well, which we'll probably get into, but running
Sure.
all of these genes in one run is another huge mistake that unfortunately 23andMe took and made.
Yeah. Well, and now they've got a fucking fire sale today. They're at $59. There's no way that they can make any money. Yes, they're stopping some of the hemorrhage. They were like $1 and change, and they're trading at 481 today. So they're going to make a little bit of traction, and people are going to start to look at it, but they're going to look at it. Rick, are they going to look at this to buy this thing? She said that she'll never sell, but I don't see how she can stop that.
Well, once the creditors step in, and I think that one of their primary banks, which I won't mention, is it would effectively step into the shoes of the shareholders in terms of ownership, and they would take a move in terms of what to do next from an asset perspective and how to turn the company around. if if it can be turned around.
Well, I've read that she was also looking to take it private again. So how would that affect things?
Well, so
Yeah,
the
how
issue,
do they do that?
yeah, so the issue with taking it private is that you have a substantial amount of debt on your balance sheet. You got a company that has a lease liability of about $75 billion, and they've got another $200-300 million in other third-party debt or more. And so on a company that's only get producing a couple $100 million in revenue, it doesn't substantiate or support the debt associated to it. So the first issue that she has is, if she's going to go out and raise capital to take it private, the private equity group would need to be able to come up with enough cash to pay down the debt, to right size the debt. So there's a couple of issues in terms of just taking the company private.
Wow. Yeah, she's got a lot on her plate. Honestly, I would not want to be her. But, you know, when you look at their privacy policy, right? Their privacy policy says in it, if we are involved in a bankruptcy, merger, acquisition, reorganization, or a sale of assets, your personal information may be sold as an asset.
That's scary. You know,
Right?
I mean, yeah, as much as people I think like to quip or joke around about how, signing away, a release on your smartphone device, somebody owns you, that's cute. It's not true. But when
Right.
somebody's got your data pack on genetics and associated to your name, that spells trouble. I don't care what anyone says. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't think anyone in this room is. But when somebody's got your DNA and they've got your name together, that's a potential quick over to an insurance company or some third party where it can be very dangerous in so many different ways. And by the way, I always want to start by saying, at least my own personal voice in this room, as a clinician, registered healthcare practitioner within my jurisdiction, which is Ontario, Canada. HIPAA, which ultimately that provides a baseline for data protection. We're all governed by that. We go further than that at the DNA company to meet and exceed these regulatory standards, but that's the base that we operate from. And that aligns with, by the way, the highest global benchmarks in data security and privacy, but we go beyond that. But here's the point I wanted to make: ethics and transparency over profit. I'm not going to speak directly to what Anne's done or what 23andMe has done. That's for public purview. You can go online and Google data breach. But our clients' data is never biobanked or sold, as I like to echo our CEO's words, period. We believe in putting ethics before profit. And that's part of, I think, the long-term game. Like, we're first and foremost about our clients, our patients, ensuring that data is solely used for providing personalized health insights. And of course, never shared or sold to third parties for monetary gain. So that's the client-centric data handling. Transparency obviously is essential. We're happy to share with anyone in this room and beyond that. Essentially, we ensure privacy policies are clear and accessible. We have people sign on that way in the very beginning. So you have full control over your data, straightforward options to make informed choices, including, by the way, the ability to delete your data whenever you choose, where I question that the true autonomy at 23andMe. It's not so easy.
Well, in their privacy policy, it says you can't do that. It says, and I quote, "Company reserves the right to retain personal information as long as the company deems it necessary." So,
what
the company's decided they're keeping your shit?
Right. What's the definition of necessary to them?
Right.
That is so vague. And
but it's designed to be, Dr. Varden. That's the whole point. You guys don't get some of the calls I get. I get a patient, I will tell you this, at least once a week, that'll call me up and say, "I want my data deleted." They get sent to me. They don't get sent to client care. They don't get sent to IT. They come straight to me. I validate who they are. And at that time, I issue an order to have all of their data removed, their account completely closed, and any information still at the lab, because we keep our samples for 60 days in case we have to retest because there's an error in the report. All of that, there's an entire checklist, and we can guarantee those people that information is now gone. We can't retrieve it for them if we wanted to. They'd have to go through the whole thing all over again.
I was just going to say, I want to drive the point home, uncoupled, not only
Right.
uncoupled, and scrambled, right? But
Yep.
also, I mean, not suggesting people do this, but literally to that end, that if you wanted to, you could sign up with us as Elmer Fudd. You know, we don't
You,
really care, so long
you
as you
could.
remember, so long as you remember your alias is Elmer Fudd when you come back to one of our clinicians. But Dr. Varden,
Right.
as we kind of spoke offline earlier today, this whole idea, I mean, I'm going to sort of say I'm no lawyer. I have a pretty decent command of medical law and some, but I'm no lawyer. But I will say the law doesn't change, but it looks at, in context, the legalities differently depending. So in a company under bankruptcy, I'm not saying that's where they're at. I'm saying in a company under bankruptcy, the law will have different things to say about the data than it does when
Right.
the company is in full operation.
And one thing that happens in bankruptcy in the United States, and a lot of people don't know this, and Rick can actually say that I am spot on this. They assign a trustee. Now, the trustee works for any law firm that's on the list of people that are approved. And the judge assigns that trustee, hence assigning that law firm. And they have to do all of this work. They get a portion of every dollar collected. Many people don't know that. Now, if they look at something and say, well, this data is an asset, and they have a conversation with a drug company, and the drug company says, listen, we'll give you 8 cents on the dollar, 15 cents on the dollar. They start negotiating to sell that asset. The trustee can literally put this shit out to the highest bidder. People don't understand that in bankruptcy court when it comes to business in the United States. They don't realize that these people are incentivized to reduce all of your debt by telling people, listen, you either take 10 cents on the dollar or you get nothing, because they're getting a portion of that.
Right.
And they can turn anything in your employ, anything that you had, they can turn it into an asset and then turn around and sell it. And you, as the person under the trustee's power, as the person driving that bankruptcy, you have nothing you can do about it. I mean, Rick, am I right? You're a licensed.
No, that's absolutely right. When the courts take over, they do assign a trustee to take over the assets and the business of the company. 100%.
Right. I mean, and guys, we actually just went live on YouTube. We've got a bunch of people that are trying to tune in and watch this. So for anyone that's joining out in the live stream, welcome to the conversation. You know, it's important that people recognize, kind of like what Dr. Wild was saying, your data and your name, your identifying information, you put those two things together and nefarious things can happen. It can. And I'm not a conspiracy nut. I'm not that person. I'm far more pragmatic than most. But the fact is it can happen. So, you know, what do we do as an entity to protect the people that come in here? One of the things that we did, and really this was the brainchild of Dr. Wild and his amazing son, who is a developer that works for us. His name is Devin. And Devin and Dr. Wild came together and created the idea around an app that I wanted. And that app has grown leaps and bounds from the genesis of it. And part of the driving force behind that with Dr. Wild was he wanted to be able to take your list of genes, not just from 23andMe, but from other gene companies, from other testing companies, and plug it into our app. And in our app, we can tell you, here's the information that you have, and here's the information that you're missing to build a real strategy for your health, for your management of chronic condition, if that's the case. So, Dr. Wild, tell us a little bit about what the app is going to do, and really what a lot of these 23andMe people who did sign up in order to gain medical insight. I mean, if you just signed up to find out that, you know, your family's from Azerbaijan, we're not going to tell you that shit. That's not a us thing. But if you signed up with 23andMe because you wanted medical insight and supporting data to that, what can they do if they come to us, Dr. Wild?
Yeah, well, first of all, you know, most of the endpoints or data sets within 23andMe are going to land you somewhere within a predictive model that you are a certain percentage, as I alluded to earlier, I used the analogy of cystic fibrosis, could be any disease. Let's call it, heart disease, cholesterolemia or high cholesterol, 1.64 times more at risk than the average population. Some circles believe that that's somewhat helpful. We don't. We're a systems-based approach. Our IP really sits in the model of pathway genomics, which I'll gladly let Dr. Varden speak to it at some additional length. But for example, your cardiovascular system, which is way more than just cholesterol levels, way more than just predisposition to hypertension, and certainly a lot more than just, perhaps one data set like oxidative stress. So it's all of these things together. What we wanted to do is make sure that anyone who's tested anywhere through any testing company, including 23andMe, had the opportunity to leverage against that, which is biology systems approach to genomics, functional genomics that we hold in highest regard and we're proud for, and use our system through an app. Everyone's got their smartphone on them. Not everyone has an hour to go home, sit at their computer, ingest their data points, and go through pages and pages of very complex system. So we made an app that's incredibly usable that will ingest TXT files, super simple to get. 23andMe has a page you can go to, you can Google TXT file 23andMe. It'll show you how to download that. You can ingest that, for example, into our app, and we will, as far as we can, take that data and give you, as much as we can, our systems approach. What should you do from a dietary, a lifestyle perspective, even a supplemental perspective? Give you access to all of our podcasts, our DNA, higher education, university, for example, and again, much as we possibly can, invite you to study your DNA through those data sets. Now, I keep saying as much as we can. 23andMe will only look at what are called SNPs, single nucleotide polymorphisms. This is like looking at a word like center. Center, you can spell it C-E-N-T-R-E, or you can spell it C-E-N-T-E-R. It's both, the meaning is the middle of somewhere. And that's a switch out of two little letters. Now, if you spelt it N-C-R-T-E, it would mean nothing. That's a mutation. We don't study the mutations leading to specific diseases. We study how center might show up in a sentence. We also study full sentences, which are called inserts and deletions. Without getting too complicated, then we also study copy number variations, which are pages and pages of information related back to a particular ability genetically to do something, like detoxify, or how your body uses clearance methods within hormones. Now, I say all of that because 23andMe doesn't even offer that information. So you will get blanks. Our app, which is incredibly powerful, will spit some blanks, but those blanks can be filled by, opting into what we provide at the DNA company. Of course, we encourage you to do that. But once again, I want to make sure everyone understands here that through the app, through the website, through clinician interactions and touch points, HIPAA compliance rather, and beyond. Ethics and transparency over profit. So people might be wondering, by the way, before we go over to Dr. Varden about, sort of what these major differences are all about. Tracy, as our CEO, why not be fully transparent? Like, we keep saying that's not our business model to sell DNA. We never will. Well, what is? Like, how are we making money? Because every company has to make some income in order to survive. So what are we doing?
You know what? When I got here, again, all we had was one test, right? And we had a great test. Our test is really a solid test. But there was a lot of information that we still didn't know. You look at genetics, epigenetics, metagenetics, you're looking at gut, you're looking at microbiome, you're looking at how rapidly are you aging. All of this is a piece to a one person. And I wanted us to expand that. I wanted us to also go in to that early detection in cancer space. That was super important to me. I think that if you look at everything that we do and how we do it, you can recognize we're not going to make the mortgage off of selling test kits to one person. If we provide them to clinics, to practitioners, and then we give those practitioners that education, how to read it, how to create that functional interpretation. I literally met with a major provider network of ours this morning in Florida. And he said, Tracy, he said, I'm putting as many of my doctors through DNA University as possible. And I said, you know, it's important to do that because then they all start at that same place as you. So yes, test kits are great. We're not making a huge profit. We're certainly not going to buy me doesn't she have a boat or a yacht or some shit? I already have a boat, but whatever. You know, we're not going to get that for me by doing that. What we're going to get is additional information for the next step. So what's the next step? And the next step is the Dr. Vardens of the world, the Dr. Kostermans of the world, the Dr. Nielsen, Dr. Smith, you know, Dr. Jackson. We have some really phenomenal practitioners. And what we did was we went to them and said, listen, we want to negotiate the rate with you like you do with the insurance company. And then we want to give you all this education and we want to give you all of this really progressive testing and we want you to use it in your business. And they did. And then they came back and they said, Tracy will work for you. So it really became building clinic business for us, Dr. Wild, where we could treat the patient and create a certain amount of agency in it with them, for them, so that they could then drive the rest of the way with great knowledge and information. And that's really where we're making our money. But we're also very careful, right? I'm very careful with our operating expenses. There's not one dime that goes out of here that I don't know what it's for, and I don't know why it was sanctioned or approved. You know, you have to do that when you're building something that you want it to grow in perpetuity. So we expanded by opening DNA University. I went to Dr. Varden and I said, I need somebody to really, with a PhD, to really come in and create this educational structure. And she did a phenomenal job. Her, Dr. Kosterman, Dr. Mansour, you, Dr. Wild, great information. And then we took that and created an entire syllabus out of it. We created additional testing training for our practitioners for all of our tests. So I think that, you know, when you look at how we are going to make our money, it's really one patient at a time, one practitioner at a time, you know, reverse and prevent. Reverse and prevent is really a strong mantra that we have around here because it can happen.
Absolutely.
And would you say that that is the key to why we're continuing to have success versus the failure and all of the capital that 23andMe has gone through?
I would say that that is in majority and some in substance. Why? I think that we do things a wee bit different, right? I'm not going to look at your genetics and again tell you that you've got a second cousin in Northern Scotland, even though I have about 150 cousins in Northern Scotland. I was born there. But I'm going to tell you why you can't shut your brain off at night. Because you had a bad day at work and something is just going and going. I'm going to be able to tell you not only why that happens, but how to dissect that. And you do the work to remove that from your life. We can tell you things that help you understand how to live your best life, whatever your best is. Your best and mine may be two different things. But it's all about you. And it is that precision medicine model. It is that personalized bottom line. Here's your genetic blueprint. Here's how we support you. Now you tell us what you want to do. What do you want to work on? And then we're going to teach you how to do that. So I think that that's, you know, again, because we do it different, we see it different. We designed it different than here's what we know this particular SNP can do. Here's what we know it can do if we put all of these things together and we want to create this drug. That's never going to be us. We're never going to participate in those types of things. And as long as I sit in this seat, we will not sell your data.
And I think it's important for people to realize, you know, kind of wrapping up the package of what we do is that our approach is at that individual pathway-centric approach, really focusing on clusters of genes that work together within the biological pathways. This really allows for that more direct, actionable insights for each individual rather than, you know, a population level risk factors like what, you know, 23andMe has. But not just that, but we have a function first methodology. really prioritizing these genetic variants with known functional outcomes. We can provide that practical health insights without the need for exhaustive genome-wide data. Our method is really designed to predict and enhance health outcomes by examining those relevant genetic influences in specific bodily functions, and then applying that basis of your genes and visualizing it, interpreting it through a functional lens, but then also offering all of the other tests that we do. I mean, we have our DNA 360, obviously that's our genetic testing, but then we have our gut 360. So we're looking at your gut biome, what's going on with that. We have our DNA aging, looking at DNA methylation and, your biological aging. We have liquid biopsy, breast 360, and our PGX, our pharmacogenomics. So, that's really where things lie, because again, your genes are not going to change. But these other factors, yes, they can, and they provide fantastic benchmarks that as you are going through making the recommendations based on your DNA 360, you can actually see how you are progressing through these other tests. So the personalized medicine, I think that's where our strength really lies, working with someone who can look at all of these puzzle pieces, putting them together into the beautiful picture of the person sitting in front of us.
Well, and and if I may, personalized, preventative, but also we have this sort of third P, participatory. So we'll help and guide you. But this is a participation in your own health journey. And by the way, the other aspect of this is actionability. I mean, unlike any other company out there, and to Dr. Varden's point, obviously, you can't change your DNA, but you can certainly, and this is as of 2001, the human genome mapping, manage genetic expression. And again, lifestyle, diet, nutrition, state of mind, better sleep, more exercise, a whole bunch of different things. But where do you focus? Where do you put your, not just monetary investment, your time investment to all these things? Of course, that's where we're going to make it really easy for folks. And those points of differentiation for whatever else exists out there, that's massive. Interpretation, the IP, how, you can have an alphabet. We've got 26 letters in the English alphabet. It's not much alone. But when you put those different letters together, and so if your DNA is that alphabet, but what the story tells us about your DNA is a totally different thing. And then furthermore, what you do about it and what we do about it, or how we help you do something about it in a participatory manner, that's the magic. And that's the difference.
No, I agree. I think that, a lot of people, again, are watching what's happening with 23andMe. I mean, there's had, 3 data breaches over the last 12 months, right? 3. They were pretty sizable. They've got their own servers. Our servers, we sit behind a big, huge group of firewalls at AWS. I mean, could we have our own data server and data center? Of course we could. I mean, I did that for 20 years for Verizon. I don't want to be in that business. I want to make sure that I've got the best money can buy in order to protect my data. And that's why we built what we built in the fashion that we built it. It was not always like that. Right? We had to go in and really delve into what's the best way to protect, because now we have patient files, right? And patient files have to go into a licensed EMR in the United States. So, there's a lot of different levels that we have gone to in order to protect the data for our folks. And the outcome, right? What's the outcome? We want them to have actionable data. In America, again, I was born in Scotland, right? I came here when I was 8 years old. And when we came to America, we didn't speak to the doctors here, because where I come from, you do not do that. If somebody has a white coat on, you sit there and shut up, because you're not that bright anyway, and they already know what's best for you. That's the way we were raised in my culture. When we came to America, people started asking doctors questions. And I remember I was really sick right before Isabel was born. That's my oldest. And I was 34, 35. And I was really sick, and I'm sitting there, and the doctor says, here, you need to take this antibiotic. You need to take, I had pneumonia or something. You have to take this steroid. You have to do this. You have to do that. And I took all of my stuff, and I'm getting ready to leave. And at that time, my ex-wife goes, wait a minute. I got questions. And I thought, oh God, don't talk. I mean, we're not allowed to do that here. But I learned something in that moment. And I learned that without that agency, without advocating in my own situation, no one's going to do it for me. And that was a big part of why I wanted concierge to be involved in our clinic here for DNA Co. And why it was so important to me that a patient got assigned a person so that if they couldn't do it, the concierge could do it for them. So there's a lot of differences between us and 23andMe. And you know what? Again, I would not want to be Anne for all the money in the world right now. She's got to be just reeling with what's going on. You know, losing everything that you envisioned or that you know, worked for or that you strive for, losing all of that, you know, in a fashion like this when you're looking at the NASDAQ list, that's a brutal way to go. So I think that for us, what I want us to do is I want us to learn as much from it as possible. We already know how we manage our data. We already know how we manage our patients and why it's different. We already know that we believe in proactive rather than reactive standard of care medicine. That's one of the reasons we included liquid biopsy. Dr. Barton, you mentioned liquid biopsy. 70% of all cancers in America right now that are diagnosed are not tested for. 70%. When you can get a test that really gives solid indicators that there could be a problem, why would you not include that if you were standard of care? Why would you not look at that as someone in the insurance business and say, you know what? It's a whole lot better for us to figure it out at stage 1 than at stage 3. But at stage 3, the average treatment is $22,000 a month. At stage 1, you're in the hundreds, if thousands.
But you know, it's not enough for us to know it. It is for everyone out there watching, listening, you know, hearing about what's going on, for them to know, because I can understand where a lot of them might be like, holy shit, okay, they're, you know, tanking. Oh my gosh, you know, our information data being breached, and putting all genetic companies in that same pool. And this is exactly why we are doing this today, to make people aware, to say, hey, we're not all like that. Not saying that she didn't have a beautiful, good, altruistic vision in the beginning.
Absolutely.
But, you know, shit happens. And, you know, but let's learn from it.
Yeah.
We've already got the setup of a different company. We just utilize DNA to help support that personalized health, you know, structure. And that's what people really need to understand, is that difference, that we are not all the same.
Yeah, Kashif and I were together over the weekend. Sorry, Dr. Wild, I didn't mean to cut you off, but Kashif and I were together over the weekend and doing a podcast from that biohacking event. And one of the questions they said to him is, you know, basically, how is DNA Co different? And he said, it's about our data. We're not selling your data. I mean, everybody was talking about what was happening with 23andMe. And when Kashif's trying to explain this to this interviewer, the interviewer just didn't understand the true protection in what we do here. And really, you know, Dr. Wild said it earlier, these drug companies, I get a call a month. I get a call a month from somebody that says, you know, hey, we could drop $10 million into your company. Nice talking to you. I know who you people are. I know exactly what you want, and you may not have it. And, you know, it's easy for me at this juncture in who we are as a company to say that, but it gets a hell of a lot harder. I mean, Rick, would you agree? It gets a hell of a lot harder when somebody says, listen, I'm going to drop 600 million into your bank account. And as the CEO, you know, you could pay yourself 10 points on that.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the biggest thing that we need to just recognize is that the DNA company is not a 23andMe. We're not selling saliva kits to test your family genealogy. We're not selling you a test kit to verify and be able to assert that we can cure a disease. What we're doing here, we're simply selling a test kit to be able to provide your genomics that can be functionally utilized by a licensed practitioner, or in any other way you want to use it, just to help you benefit in your life, to be healthier and to understand what you should be doing to curtail any potential future disease down the road. So it's a significant difference in terms of what we're doing. And, we're not looking to spend millions and millions of dollars every year to try to come up with these cures. What we're saying is that, listen, here we have a roadmap to your life. Let's help you help yourself get the right assistance to be able to interpret this genomic coding so you can understand how to live. It's a big difference, and it's really worth doing it. It's a great thing.
Yeah.
And I'd love
Yeah.
to follow that, if I may.
Yes, please.
Because that was just so beautifully, eloquently described and spoken. There's two generally individuals, clients, patients that we service at the DNA company. One is a health seeker. They're looking to solve a problem. They're looking to figure out a solution to their health woes, their conditions, their issues. The other is an individual who's a wellness seeker. They're looking to go from good to better, or their best. Two general classifications. We use your genomics, your pathways, to inform us as to how to help you. In the case of a health seeker, once we've solved those issues, we're going to graduate you to a wellness seeker, get you from your, current status, which is okay, to your very best. Having said all that, and we like to use this pretty powerful slogan, all of this is untoward, kind of cute, fun buzzwords of the day: health span over lifespan. Lifespan's how long you're clocking on the planet. Health span's how long you're going to be here in your best of days. But
Right.
under that, it is trying to, ensure that through personalization, using your playbook, your guidebook of your pathway, your genomics, we have incredibly useful insights as to how to change the day you die. That's it. Bottom line, we are trying to put healthy years on your life
Yeah.
and change the day you, and we won't compromise profits, safety, security, or anything else about it in order to be able to do that. And we're not mind readers, by the way, but on these webinars, we do put together some good polls. And hopefully, if you haven't already asked or answered in their polls, we're asking you tonight, how concerned you are about the privacy of genetic data. What is your primary reason for attending tonight? And share this with people you know and love, by the way, especially those who you know or think have done a 23andMe test or any other test. And of course, have you done your DNA testing with us? So why don't we, when we have a second.
Yeah, pull up the poll for us.
Okay, perfect. So what we're getting is actually about 40% of attendees who have answered, through not concerned at all, to somewhat concerned, to very concerned, to extremely concerned. There's a split. 40% are either very, and another 40% are extremely. So about 80% of folks listening in this evening, and I'm sure that represents most of the majority of the population, are anywhere between very and extremely concerned. And frankly, part of what we're kind of saying here is you probably should be, or at least be concerned enough to work with a company that, holds your privacy and highest standards. Then we also asked, what is your primary reason for attending the webinar? 32% said understanding data privacy practices. We're going through it. Learning about genetic testing services, 16%. Ensuring my genetic data is secure, that's almost 50%, 48%. And then some others. So we'll get some feedback there perhaps. And then thirdly, we asked, have you had your DNA tested by a third-party company? Over half, the majority said yes. A very small minority says 8% said no. And then 36%, interestingly, said no, and I don't plan to. That part of this population, I would love to at least encourage you to look at what we're doing at the DNA company. Might change your mind, or at least listen to this webinar. Might change your mind, because what we're doing to change the day you die, using pathway genomics and clinicians who have such insights into how to manage your health overall, and we do it all full ethics, full above board, and privacy, I think you might change your mind. And then number 4, we asked, how familiar are you with data privacy regulations in the genetic testing industry? Most people say not familiar through to slightly or moderately familiar. A 4% minority says very familiar. Most people don't know what this is all about. It's very complex stuff that, and funny enough, most of us, we have insurance papers on our car and home. We know what investments we've made. When it comes to our health file and understanding regulations around our health, the majority of us, it's way over our heads, sadly, but that's the reality. And very lastly, we ask questions like, what concerns you most about DNA testing companies? The number one by far, 88% says data security and privacy, misuse of data by third parties, 88%. Would enhanced data privacy policies make these people more likely to use DNA testing services like ours? The majority say yes, absolutely, 56%. Only 28% said possibly, and a very small minority say no difference. And then do people believe, very lastly, that DNA testing companies should share data with medical or research organizations? 72% say no. Good. They're right.
They are right. If you want to participate in a study, participate in a study. Know what that study is. Know what's involved. Know who the players are. Know what the parameters are. Know what they're going to do with your genetic sample, your genetic material. If you don't want to do that, you should not be backdoored into it because you didn't read the T's and C's. I mean, people in America don't understand right now. Anyone on this call, whoever has insurance, if you have insurance, type the name of your insurer in the webinar chat if you want. Did you know that even with a full policy, not one of you are guaranteed coverage at all on anything? Your insurance policies say, we don't have to pay for none of your shit. That's the bottom line. We don't have to pay for any of it. And people get Humana Medicare, Kim, they don't have to pay. Even Medicare doesn't have to pay. Every single time you guys sign up for something, it's not absolute. That's why it's so important that when you do part with your genetic material, you know who's got it. You know who's using it, right?
And
you
for
know
what
what
reason?
they're using it for, right? What are they using it for, right? I don't want to see like somebody with 3 heads and they all look like me. I don't want that to be a thing. I mean, I don't know if it could be a thing. It would be kind of a cool movie, but I don't want my material just being created into God knows what.
It reminds me of a trend that's quite familiar for years on social media, and it goes like this: what we ordered or what I ordered versus what I got.
Yeah.
And it speaks volumes to this whole conundrum. What you think you have, and in context of insurance or privacy acts, when you're trusting a DNA company, what you ordered versus what you got, 2 different things. And like I was saying earlier, I mean, I'm no lawyer, but the eyes of the law, not necessarily the law itself, but how the law is interpreted, can sometimes change when a company dynamics, such as going from public to private, and or from private back, or vice versa. These are they are unfortunately flexible.
Yeah. Well, Anne is going to rue the day if she has to file for a Chapter 7, even a Chapter 11 for a reorganization. She's going to rue the day because a trustee is going to go in there and they're going to start getting calls from these data companies, these biobanks, and they're going to offer them billions of dollars because they can reuse that. If there's material there, they can reuse it. If there's data there, they can reuse it. And it will literally right the ship. And there's not going to be a damn thing she can do about it.
Especially when you've got 15 million
15
people.
million. Yeah. Yeah. And one thing that, we talked earlier about the app coming. And again, Devin has done such an amazing job. He's a brilliant young man. I can't wait to watch him take over Google when he gets to be full size like his daddy. But I think that people need to understand, we're going to let you guys waitlist on the beta. I wasn't going to roll out the app, and Dr. Wild knows this. We've talked about it. I wasn't going to roll out the app until the beginning of the year. But this precipitating event made it to where I went, we got to do something. So it is in beta. We are allowing you guys to get on that wait list. If you wish to do that, you can send us an email at client care. You can drop your information into the chat window for an email address for us to contact you. And we will have a wait list created. You guys can be on it. Like Dr. Wild said, if you know somebody else that's done 23andMe, send them the replay link to this. This is important. People have their information. People that have their information are not known to them. They didn't sign up to do business with that person. And we don't know how far anybody can or will take it. And again, this is not a conspiracy conversation. This is if somebody called me up and said, hey, Blue Cross, which is my insurance company, Blue Cross got hacked, which by the way happened. If they called me up and said that, you can best believe I would be blowing up the phone at Blue Cross saying, what did you do to protect my data? Who's got my data? Who did this breach? I want everything. That's how all these class action lawsuits get formed, right? I mean, Rick can speak to this. He sees it all the time. It's how all these companies get sued. There was a $30 million settlement just with 23andMe earlier this year. What was the 30 million for? Part of the data breach. So who got paid? It only takes 3 people to make a class action. That's all it takes. And you can best believe right now, there's no less than 10 class action lawsuits already started by every big law firm in the company with 27 names in their title. And they're all queuing up to go and sue 23andMe. And the only people that get money in this, who's the only person that gets money, Rick?
The bank.
The bank, the lawyers.
The
Oh,
lawyer.
the bank and the lawyers, absolutely.
The lawyers take 40 to 60% of the class action lawsuit. And then if there's $100 million left over, but there's 15 million people in it, do the math. You're not going out to eat on that money. There's not a whole lot there. Yes, Dr. Wild.
You know, before everyone runs out and preemptively goes screaming online and trying to erase their 23andMe data, let me just say it is very valuable data for you to own. So if I can share my screen here, here's what you do. It's very, very simple. So as soon as I get ability to share my screen.
Julius, will you turn that on, please?
Yeah, I think we're
It's
good
coming,
to go
Joshua.
now. So here's what people should know. First and foremost, all you have to do is Google 23andMe. You can tell how many people I've asked to do this. 23andMe TXT file. Okay, that's what you're looking for. This is your raw data. You own this. You need to download this. Currently, for the majority, 99.9% of 23andMe customers, it sits somewhere deep in their portfolio. Okay, they log in and this is what 23andMe is using to give them their genealogy, their ancestry, and so forth. Accessing their raw data. It's very simple. It tells you how, gives you step-by-step instructions. You own this. So it's so simple. You can go to this link, you sign in with your 23andMe data, and then next thing you know, you are downloading a TXT raw data file. It's 25 megabytes, takes almost no room at all on your computer. That's step one. So don't go and erase your profile. You download your data to your hard drive and secure it. Number one. Number two, if in the future, and we hope that this is the case, you want to ingest that anonymously into the DNA Company app, you can. And once again, we're going to interpret for you using our IP of logical functional genomic pathway analysis. It's limited because we test beyond what 23andMe tests for. I want to make sure everyone's clear about that. Thirdly, in your profile in 23andMe, the whole point of it is you have those 3rd, 4th, 5th cousins. Send them this information on how to download their TXT file. Send them and then welcome them to our community. The DNA app is free. You can upload this information free on your smart device. Know and learn through your day. What should I be eating? What should I be thinking, taking, doing? What maybe should I be supplementing with? It's all there. So that's my suggestion is not only do you not go and immediately erase your profile, that you download your data. It's yours to own. You paid for it. Use it cautiously, but certainly securely with our DNA app, and invite everyone on your list, your 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 10th cousins. Do that now.
I think that something that's important to say to that is, even if you go delete your data, they didn't.
Right.
They have reserved the right, I believe it says, they have reserved the right to retain your personal information. So
We just
even
don't
if
want
you
people
go,
not to have access. I mean,
right,
them
I
deleting
totally
their file.
agree. I totally agree. I think everybody should have their own data. When you guys all go see a doctor and you get your lab results, you take a printout. It's no different. It's your information. You can action it. You are allowed to question. We recommend that you question. But when you go to get your data and you download it, just know they still are going to be able to sell it. So if you do have things to protect yourself in different privacy products that you own, look into those things. Make sure that you check the box. I mean, I have it all over my credit report, for example, that, you know, nothing. I couldn't finance a ham sandwich with Miss Piggy as a cosigner unless they call me up and say, hey, Tracy, are you trying to buy a new car? And the answer to that is usually yes, because I'm a car junkie. But make sure you lock your shit down.
Yes.
Lock it down. You have that right. And Sue Nordemo asks a question. Hi, Sue. And Sue Nordemo asks a question in here that says, you know, hey, if I give my doctor my information, am I no longer protected? Well, that depends on what your doctor does with it. So if you take your DNA company profile and we give your doctor the clinician summary, you can give them to that in a printed fashion. They can put that printed data into your file, but they don't have your data file. They don't have the raw data. They don't have the biometric information. They only have the outcome report. So yes, that report goes to the doctor and you have to speak to that doctor about that privacy concern, but they don't have the raw data. And the raw data is what we're talking about here, that all of these 15 million people are going to have that could be compromised.
Absolutely.
So I don't think we have any other questions in here. Do you guys want to share anything with our folks on the way out? Dr. Barden, what about you?
Just, you know, be wary, be aware of what you are doing. Actually read those disclosures. You know, this is, don't give away your agency. Okay. Don't think that everyone has your best interests at mind. You know, not saying, oh, and don't treat us any differently. Do your due diligence, test it, look it up, do your research, and then you will see. You need to be discerning in these things. But I will say, I mean, honestly, if I didn't trust this company, if I looked into it and it was something I believed in, I wouldn't be here. You know, I'm putting my belief, my family, everything on the line for that, because I have that strong belief, you know, in Tracy, in this company, in what we are doing. I love my clients. I love what I am doing. That is why I'm here. So do your homework and, you know, be discerning.
Agreed. And thank you, Dr. Barden. It's a pleasure to have you as
that.
part of the team. Rick, what do you want to share with them on the way out?
Listen, I think that the DNA company's got a great platforming and should be a part of your repertoire for a healthy life. And being able to functionally utilize these tools is a huge benefit.
Awesome. Awesome. We just got a question from Kathy. Kathy says, I already have a DNA company test. Does 23andMe provide anything in addition? So Kathy, my official non-scientific, I am not a doctor response is going to be no, pumpkin. But I'm going to ask Dr. Wild to tell you why. So Bryce, can you answer that for me?
Yeah, once again, they're looking at the 20,000 plus SNPs, single nucleotide polymorphisms that we contain within the unraveled genetic code that all of us have. But interpretation is everything. So the way they test for it yields extremely limited information per gene. Genes can be much more than SNPs. So we look at full lines of code above and beyond. We will look at SNPs. We look at many SNPs. We look at them in context of pathways that tell much more in-depth stories about each of these genes separately and together with a whole bunch of other genes. We look at, you know, what are called indels or lines and lines of code, much more meaningful than one single letter. And then we also look at manuscripts or chapters of information. So just to drive this home, you know, there might be a single nucleotide polymorphism, a SNP on a single postal zip code on your DNA profile that has very limited insights as to how well you process estrogen, a hormone. If we looked rather at the entire pathway of how you make estrogen from testosterone, then how you clear estrogen, metabolize it, and detoxify it, sometimes we'll be looking at huge manuscripts, copy number variations, we call them CNVs, as to how you clear certain things versus a single letter. So much more meaningful. And, I'll just say as we wrap up that, we all have these files on all kinds of other things, on our home, our car, our insurance,
Yep.
make one on your own health. I've been saying this to my patients for over 25 years in clinical practice. And remember that your DNA is yours. It's your right to own. It's your right to privacy. And so again, at the DNA company, we stand for promise to protect that right. As a co-founder of the company, that's been my MO, since day one. It's been even more strictly laid out and extended, of course, with our incredible CEO at the helm as of 2020. So we promise that to protect that right. I would just say that ensuring our approach to these genetic insights always keeps your data safe, secure, and in your control. That's our commitment to privacy. And it's not just a privacy policy, rather, it's our purpose, our MO.
1000%. And I'm going to finish out with, again, Kashif and I spent a lot of time talking about this weekend. Kashif, as you know, he's a provider for us. He's been with us for quite some time. And we're actually going to rebroadcast this for him and his community. The whole goal is for you guys to really own your own path, right? That includes your data. That includes your commitment to treatment. That includes your commitment to not having treatment, whatever it is. You got to own your own path, right? And do what feels authentic to you. And just know that as the CEO of the company, it's my goal to make sure that you have that arena, that you have that space for that to be your reality. And we will continue to protect your data. We will continue to be very conservative in what we do as it relates to data. We're not going to go and start a bunch of clinical trials. If anything was to change for the company, even right down to our operating address, if we were to move from, California, where our office is now, to New York, which I'm never going to do, but if I did, you guys all would get notified. We believe in transparency. Dr. Wild said it over and over. We believe in transparency. We believe in that disclosure. We believe in that integrity, and that's not going to change. It just simply is not. So thank you all for hopping in here. I know it was short notice. Like Dr. Wild said, send this to your friends that have got these files. Kim, you're very welcome. Thank you for coming. It's always great to have you. You guys have friends that have these files. People need to understand what they don't understand. A lot of people put on the poll, they didn't understand privacy practices at all. So guys, use this as a tool to help other people and continue to propagate solid information that's based in fact and not based in fear. So thank you all very much. Team on the back end, thank you all very much. Always good to see all of you. Thanks, you guys. Dr. Wild, thanks for hopping in on such short notice. I appreciate you. All right. Bye, everybody. Have a good night.